I am sure it's not easy given the fact that you're in UK and most people do eat meat there. So
Yeah,
it's
like, and
definitely not.
it's hard because, I mean, many other countries do this, but like British people want to proudly boast that they're a nation of animal lovers. And then obviously,
Ah,
yeah, they're farming animals and like hunting animals and doing all these things. So, like, when people have this identity that they've assigned to themselves of being such a lover of an individual, it's hard to tell them that they're actually being abusive. So, it's harder in that way.
definitely a Yeah, definitely weird cognitive dissonance. Actually, I believe it functions with the same mechanism
Mm-hmm.
that the concept of being a shitty person at work, but being a decent human being outside of work, that works within someone's mind, right? They
Mm-hmm.
justify it that I am in a corporate job, I have to act in a certain way, I have to be evil.
Mm-hmm.
Classically speaking, and at home I can be a decent person, I can donate to charity. I believe there is either a sort of compartmentalization, some sort of cognitive dissonance, but definitely hypocrisy.
Or do you think it's more so that like someone feels as if they've done enough, so then they can
Mhm.
go forward and then do horrible things because they do good things sometimes? Like, I think of it that way. I don't know if that's more accurate or.
Hmm. To me personally, it that feels more of a retroactive justification after you question them on their hypocrisy. Then they're like
Okay,
struggling to figure out some explanation, but in their minds it's most likely compartmentalization, right? Like
right.
they have different personas and they cannot make a singular personhood. That is why a lot of these people end up talking about these things in therapy also. The
Yeah.
fact that, "Oh, I don't know who I am." Obviously you don't know who you
No.
are. You're different people, at different places. You're not
Mm-hmm.
consistent.
Exactly. Yeah. You aren't just a static being that can be like encapsulated throughout your entire existence. I do agree with that. Yeah. Okay. Are you
All right.
on now? Can we begin this? Like the specific.
Oh yeah, so I'm just like screen recording it. I'll like chop it up and like post it on my channel later.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, I'm gonna do the same thing. I don't know when it will be posted. I've got like loads of recordings, so I don't know what order I want to go with.
I-
But yeah.
I'm still
Okay.
in the mass upload phase of my YouTube journey, so I'm like mostly just very rough edits and just like post it and get it out there.
So just
That
to
kind
be
of
clear,
thing.
because I didn't have time to like, I saw you responded to Cosmic Skeptic or something. I'm getting the idea that you do like philosophy is your kind of focus. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. The main focus of the channel is philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
and most of my videos, at least like 70 videos, have been life philosophy, right? So I try and challenge myself. Right, there's a concept of dialectical thinking by
Mm-hmm.
Hegel, in
Mm-hmm.
which you present yourself with contradictions, and then you have to think on a higher plane of like higher perspective in order to resolve them. That is how you reach deeper and deeper thought. So I use Chat GPT as a way to challenge me. I
Mm-hmm.
say X thing, it says the opposite, and then I have to resolve that paradox and like get to a greater understanding. Oftentimes, it ends up like making me reach new things. Sometimes I make frameworks and such, like philosophical frameworks. So it's like fun. That is what I've been doing on my channel at least.
So it's like a kind of like you separate yourself from your mind and you're looking at yourself as if you were in some sort of dream, looking at yourself and review your behavior and thought process. Is that what you mean?
Uh, you know how people analyze themselves? So,
Mm-hmm.
like, they're basically thinking about what they're thinking.
Yes.
Uh, what I end up doing sort of is I see myself as an object, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, when I'm talking about, okay, this is true, then the next step is like, I believe this to be true because of my cultural conditioning. I believe this to be
Yeah.
true because of certain biases, because I want certain outcomes. What happens when I remove these assumptions? Then I reach a more objective understanding. Then I have to break that down also, because even my understanding of what objectivity is also has assumptions, right?
Yes.
And the more I can do it, the closer I reach to what really is going on and not simply my perspective. Of course, at the end of the day, it's not going to be 100% pure,
Yeah.
but it is going to be better than what I was earlier on.
I can agree with that. That's something I try and do. I try and strip myself of my experience and my context and just kind of try and think of it as logically as I can. But obviously, yeah, we are inserting emotion in places that I don't think we could even like understand. So yeah, I understand that. But for some context, we've kind of interacted because you commented on one of my videos, and I foolishly didn't actually clarify with you because you're set to defend a position. But I'm not sure if you're defending the position of the guy in the video or you're defending the position of the comment that was made. Because the form...
Specific, very specifically the particular comment, because he said that animals eat other animals,
Yes.
and as such it is justified to eat animals. And then you went on to like name other things that animals do that
Mm-hmm.
human beings don't correspond with, right?
Yeah.
And I was just looking at it mechanistically, right? If we if Okay, I'll expand on the argument later, but his point was to me essentially coming out of equality. In principle it was coming out of equality, right? It might not be very clean,
Okay.
but when we do put ourselves in a sort of caretaker role, a sort of more advanced species role whose responsibility it is to have morals as compared to every other species and take care of their lives, that feels to me to be very like pedestalizing ourselves, right? Putting ourselves in a superior position. And I
Mm-hmm.
believe that is antithetical to the concept of equality of all lives. At least that is how I go about it. And I believe one more thing, just like to finish it off, I believe veganism at its core is about not killing animals, a out of compassion, but b also out of a sort of equality, right? We don't kill our own, why are we killing animals? So if that equality is a necessary for a fact of being a vegan, then if there is a contradiction in which ultimately it is stemming out of inequality, right, by taking care of animals, then I believe it like contradicts the position entirely.
Yeah, there's two things I want to go. I don't know where to go first. I think I want to go with the equality. So, when an animal eats another animal in nature, to you, in your mind, that's equality, would you say?
uh, Not animal, a particular animal eating another animal, but the entire process of animals eating each other and the whole food cycle ends up being equal. For example, a lion eating what do you call it? A deer
Mm-hmm.
is the same as a baboon eating, let's say, a smaller animal.
Mm-hmm.
Those two acts are equal, that is what I'm saying.
Okay, I'm just trying to. So, if I can just quote you verbatim? You said, his logic supports equality. Your logic pedestalizes human beings as some kind of superior species. That's sickening. I'm a lifetime vegetarian, no eggs. And just for context for other people so they know, now I know as well that what you are supporting the premise of is a comment that says, his logic was terrible as hell. And by the way, this guy was basically making a might makes right argument, but I think he was being silly. But either way, my logic is eating meat, eating meat as animals do. As a kid, I was taught about the food chain. So animals eat one another for nutrition. It's just a natural course of life. But I do not like how the dairy industry tortures and exploits animals in order to meet the demand of the meat-eating public. This is something which is quite horrifying. So the bit that you're defending is the idea of equality in the sense of, I'm just trying to understand it. Like, so it's equality in the
Okay, so
sense. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, I'm just saying, animals eating each other,
Mm-hmm.
that act, like, see, human beings eat animals, that is one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lion also eats an animal. I'm saying those two things should be considered to be equal. That is all.
They should be considered to be equal. Okay, so yeah, so when a vegan says, so what I've done in that instance, someone said to me, I'm this is an implication, but their implication is that it's justified for them to eat animals because animals do
Hmm.
it, right, in nature. So I've just said,
Yeah.
okay, well, in nature, you know, lions
Hmm.
will go to a pride and they will kill all the infants who are there to
Right.
stimulate
Hmm.
sexual reproduction in the females. We would not, and
Hmm.
I'm saying we would not accept that morally. So
Right.
I'm just struggling to understand how I've then pedestalized in any way. But other more so, what I'm saying is they also, if it is the case, we pedestalize when we insert our morals. They also pedestalize under the assumption that they wouldn't accept it morally for me to kill infants of mating competition, right?
Yeah.
Do you see where I'm getting caught
Mhm.
up?
I get it. You're saying that animal morals and human morals are inherently different, and as such, we should be abiding by a different standard. Because then you point out three or five things that animals do that it is not acceptable in human society, right?
Yeah, so I kind of teeter between this, but from what I understand, non-human animals and some humans
Mhm.
are not moral agents. They are moral patients. They lack moral agency to my understanding. They may have some moral agency, but I would say it's probably limited, or we don't yet understand the level of their moral agency. So I'm comfortable saying at the moment they're moral patients. So it's not so much, oh, they don't have morals, I do. It's just that I don't know if they have the capacity currently, or I don't understand their capacity to have these moral conversations.
So, is it like atheism but for morals? In the sense that you're saying, I am not claiming that God does not exist. I'm not claiming that animals do not have
Mm-hmm.
morals, but we don't know. And therefore, to not assume anything, I am going to just take the Occam's razor position that animals are amoral agents as compared to human beings. That just like works out better.
Yes, because
Like when you're trying to use it.
yes, because if I think that's probably the better thing to do, because like say for example in law, like we'll go to the legal realm here, like you have a person who has committed a moral atrocity, they've murdered someone, say. We have to then find out and distinguish whether or not they actually knew what they were doing before we could penalize them in the correct way. Like we need to know the
Right.
context of whether or not they were aware. So I don't want to be penalizing them for these actions based on an assumption that I cannot what's the word? I cannot guarantee because I cannot communicate
Mhm.
with them these discussions. So in my ethics, I do treat them as a moral patient. You know, the
So
outcome.
intention matters
Yes,
essentially.
not fully. It's not the whole picture, but I do believe,
Mhm.
you know, in when I'm looking at a crime that has happened, intention does matter to
Mhm.
me. Yeah,
Right. So, mm,
but outcome is also important.
why does yeah? So, like, what kind of intention when someone commits a murder would make it so that you will give them capital punishment, for example?
Oh, I don't want to dodge the question, but I don't know how I feel about capital pun. You mean like killing them, right? Yeah.
Right.
But basically, what you're asking is what would be so bad that they get heavily punished, right? Well, just
Right. Capital punishment in specific, because there is like a larger point I want to like use this into. But if you personally do not believe in capital punishment at all, you can also say that. That also works.
yeah, like but basically, I would be willing to punish them heavily if
Mm-hmm.
they were fully aware of that what they were doing. They
Mm-hmm.
have no remorse. They want to do it again. They find it
Mm-hmm.
funny. You know, things like attributes like that. There's no remorse present. They knew what they were doing. They had full capacity to understand, and the crime that they
Right.
committed was so atrocious that yeah, that would, you know, like serial killer sort of vibe.
So premeditation of sorts. Premeditation is
Y-
like they planned it or they like preemptively decided before entering the room. They knew that they were going to kill this person,
yes,
and
that
there was no. Yeah, I
yeah,
get it.
that
So
sort of
like
thing as well. Yeah, definitely.
first degree murder,
Yeah.
that works. So first degree murder is something that you would heavily punish,
Yes.
right? Uh, Not necessarily capital punishment, as I understand.
Not necessarily.
Just heavy
Yeah, I haven't
punishment.
quite hashed out my conclusion on that. Yeah.
Right. So, like, you wouldn't. Let's just see. Society does do that, right? A lot
Hmm.
of different legal systems across the world they do capital punishment.
Yes.
Why do you think they enact capital punishment? Like, is there like some sort of equalizing act, or is there like another purpose?
I think there could be multiple purposes. I'll list a couple that come to mind. I think one is I think there is a feeling of needing retribution within society and within individuals, like needing some sort of revenge or justice, whatever you want to call it. And I think taking away someone's life when they've done that, for example, to somebody else, it feels like an equalizing act. I'm unsure if it's equalizing. I think so much damage has been done, I don't think you can then equalize it. The other reason could be to set an example so that people feel disincentivized to do it themselves. Another one could be protection. Like if you leave them out to society, they could be really dangerous to people. Some people don't want to pay to house prisoners, for example. So it could be for those sorts of reasons. Those are the ones that come to mind. So retribution, need for justice, setting an example, preventative measures against other people doing it, and saving money would probably be the ones that I think societies would do it for.
Saving money also, right? Okay.
Not that
So
not
if
that
we
it
take
does.
all,
Not to say it does, because obviously people are used for slave labor in prisons, but that could be the argument. Just to be
that also works, right? They're like using them to make more money
yes.
rather than, so it's either neutral or positive in terms of economic investment, never negative.
No. Yeah, but yeah, that could be
Yeah.
the
So
proposed argument for sure.
I think you're like pretty like you've summarized most of it. And see, so the feeling, the justice is an abstract concept, right? It comes out of a need for equality, which is a feeling which, like, we want to equal things, right? If this happens, that should happen. The concept of equality is more than likely evolved within biology, within like societal programming. When you live together, uh, if you are programmed to be equal, if someone gives me an apple, I give them something in return, that just makes it so overall survival's odds increase, right? Because there is cooperation between members of species. And when it is applied negatively, it comes into revenge, right? That feeling is present, that adaptation is present, and it can manifest positively or negatively depending on the kind of act is being done. uh, then there is the deterrent, right? So to prevent future people from following their example, right? You show that this is what happens when you kill someone, so more people avoid it. Then there is the preventative measure, that this person has killed, and we have identified they are of the psyche that they might end up killing more people, and therefore we should lock them up, or at least we should kill them. And then there is the saving money, right? This person is a net negative society. Ultimately, all of this, can I summarize all of this as net negative to society? Does that work?
Yeah, I would think
Right.
so.
So
Yeah.
net. So why is net negative to society a issue? The reason net negative to society is an issue is because it decreases our odds of survival. And as we understand, all of biology, or most, at least from what we understand about biology, it is about two things: it's reproduction and survival. And again, they can be interlinked also. It's the propagation of species. Ultimately, that is the core across everything. Can, like, is that something you agree with, or like would you want to like argue against it?
I had kind of confusion with the statement that something is net negative to society if it affects survivability of the humans, because I could think of some political stances that people might have that I don't see an argument for it affecting survival of humans necessarily, unless you keep stacking things, then maybe you could eventually get there. But sometimes
So
I think
it's like
it could be a net
it's
negative
a
when it's not in accordance with someone's values. Would that also be?
I guess it's like this, right? The reason I want society to flourish, the reason I want society to survive, is so that I can survive, right? So it's like my survival, then there is society's survival. These are the two priorities that I have.
Okay.
And because, like, we are individual people, right? So if everyone is baked in a, it's is like biologically programmed in a way to prioritize their survival, and we have seen over our evolution that working together ensures more people survive. That is the reason, like, we're biologically programmed to, like, firstly look for our survival. That is the hard coding. Then the soft coding is to look to make sure that society survives at large, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm understanding. So how does this then, can we connect it to the
Yeah,
comment that you made?
yeah,
Sorry,
I wanted to.
I'm jumping the gun.
No, that's perfectly fine. We should stay on topic.
Mhm.
So, the how this connects is that uh, my larger point with this would be that what was it? Yeah. The reason we take exception when it comes to human beings, the reason we do not do infanticide, the reason we do not do a lot of these things is because it is net negative to our society, right? The way that we've evolved, these 5 or 6 practices that other animals do, they might have been net positive for their survival. They're not net positive for our survival. That is why we have a biological response against it. While on the other hand, we do kill other animals. It could be for a variety of reasons, but we've just evolutionary been raised or like survived in a sense that killing animals for protein or to ensure survival or for XYZ things has worked out well for us. Now, the only way to take problem with this act of killing animals would be if you have a external ethical standard that you are now imposing on society, or you're a new ethical standard that you're introducing,
Mhm.
right? Or and that will by its very nature make human beings an exception to everyone else, because other omnivorous species also eat animals, right? So we have to make an exception for human beings. Why are we affected by these ethics? And secondly, we have to prove that this ethical standard is better than the status quo of killing animals. Why is that?
Okay. I'm just, so are you saying, because it could be the case that, would it be your preference that I then argued that veganism is more important for the survivability of the species versus animal eating?
Yeah, I believe, see, since animal eating is the status quo,
Mm-hmm.
and since veganism is a ethical standard that we're like introducing to this society that already eats animals,
Mm-hmm.
so we have to prove that this ethical standard will help us, or at least this ethical standard is greater in some way, maybe in abstract way, maybe in moralistic way, maybe philosophically, than our current standard, which is based on naturalism of sorts, based on nature.
Well, I'd argue it's not based on nature, because how we farm animals, it's very far removed from the natural system. And I would also say, why are we only interested in the survivability of the human and not like, because why can't I just say, before you said you have the hard coding of I want to survive. So then I could do the soft coding is I want others to survive, like humans, you would say. But for me, I'm saying I want other individuals, like other sentient beings, to survive, because by my understanding, if you can make it logically the case that it's morally acceptable to slit a pig's throat to eat them, it's not so hard to argue the case for the human context. So
Okay.
I'm confused as to why we're just worried about the survivability of the human and not the other sentient beings.
Okay. So if, let's say, two people were there on an island, one was significantly weaker than the other one, and there was nothing to eat,
Mm-hmm.
right? No law enforcement, no society, nothing to eat. Do you believe the stronger one will eventually kill the weaker one and eat them?
It's not inevitable, but it's probably the case that the stronger one would eat the other one to survive.
At some point of starvation, right? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
not immediately, maybe
Mm-hmm.
not in 2 days, maybe by the end of the week when they just cannot survive, right? So
Yeah.
ultimately, at the end of the day, we will prioritize our own survival, even like as compared to everyone else's survival. That
Mm-hmm.
is, and that is like present across society also, even within normal society, that we prioritize ourselves. That is the reason it is said that human beings are inherently selfish.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, if they had the option of two human beings, one and a pig, and do you believe that they will not wait till the end of the week? Maybe they'll eat the pig by day 3, or if they're very compassionate. If they're not very compassionate, maybe on day 1 they'll kill it and dry it up and eat it, and they will not feel any emotional dysregulation from it.
I think it's probably the case that they pick the pig before the human being, but I still think
Yeah.
they would cause them it depends on their values. It would
Yeah,
still cause them
definitely.
emotional dysregulation. But I do think if your point is they would pick the pig before the human being.
Yeah, and the point is, even the most hardcore vegan, someone who's completely to within the standard that every life should deserve to live, even that vegan is ultimately going to pick the pig first rather than the human being. As a vegan, do you agree with that statement?
I know some people who would pick the human to eat first, but based on other perhaps like misanthropic views or just valuing other animals, yeah, different having a different value set. But I think it's probably mostly the case that the vegans are still going to pick the pig first before the human being.
So, short of very extreme exceptionalism, like that is a general rule that we can see that human beings
Probably.
prioritize their survival, then
Mm-hmm.
the survival of their species, then the survival of any other species, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and these two things, my own survival and the survival of my species, we can agree that this is biologically biologically coded within ourselves, right? Within us as a species, that I will prioritize my and my community's survival first. That is also the reason tribalism exists, because they're closer in proximity to me, my community, and they're going to guarantee my survival more than the other community. That is the reason racism also exists.
I don't know if it just falls on my human group. I think it's just my group that you would prioritize. So if you have like a group, a pack of dogs in there as well, I think it's the case that that group would be the value. So it'd be your survivability and your in group. I don't think it would necessarily be my humans.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue personally that it is going to go as me, then my community, then my society, then human beings at large, and then animals when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to the order of priority that we're going to have. And I believe this understanding of ethics could even explain a lot of racism
Yeah.
and a lot of different sorts of discrimination. Also, it's ultimately tribalistic, right? Because we prioritize our survival, then people who are going to ensure our survival, than people who are at our species, because a human is, because we are encoded that way, that also makes it so that human being is less likely to eat me, a wolf is more likely to eat me. That is
Mm-hmm.
also the case. So it's like, ultimately it all comes down to survival, right? In that case, when you introduce veganism,
Mm-hmm.
basically a very new and radical way of looking at life as whole, looking at ethics as whole, this is a completely new framework, right? This framing of wanting to like protect animals might actually exist in what do you call, in biology also. That is the reason we were able to domesticate certain species, right? But it's definitely not uh, as present, or it's as, or at least not a rule as such, as compared to saving our own species. Across our evolutionary history, we have killed animals and we have eaten them, similar to every other omnivorous creature. That is the standard, the biological standard of life on earth as we understand it.
I would contest that. Like when you say new, how many years are you talking?
Mm, I veganism, I don't know. It could, it might as well be after we've started to read and write. That could be when the
Oh,
entire
okay,
thing
you're
came,
going kind
after
of
we
far
became
back.
literate.
Yeah, I didn't know
Yeah,
if you meant
I'm
like
not saying
40
it
years
came
old.
100. No, no, no.
Yeah, yeah.
I see. I'm from India, so I like my people have been vegetarians for like at least more than 1,000 years. So
Yeah.
I know it's quite old.
Yeah, I just wouldn't argue that, like, so throughout civilization, humans have done things that are very antithetical to the survival of humans in and of themselves. Like, we've had multiple holocausts. It's very much, it seems to engage in, like, if you're part of my in group, even if you're not part of my in group, even if you're human, I will kill you, and I don't care about the survival of you and your lineage. So,
Right, and I think that still fits with the model that we've established so far of my survival, then my immediate community
yeah,
survival, my
immediate
tribe survival,
community.
and so on.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah,
I
so
mean, basically, whatever ensures my survival the most,
yeah.
directly or indirectly.
So what we've outlined is that it may be the case that someone would eat the pig before they'd eat the human. but I
Right.
don't know if it's been addressed, the question that I had in like, or I don't understand yet. What why can we not consider them still in our moral framework, even if
Hmm.
we value them less still? Like, for example, I don't know, I've
Hmm.
just met you today, so we don't have like
Right.
a big friendship or anything. So I value
Right.
probably emotionally my best friend more than I value you, right? But I'd still not kill you or exploit you. You know what I mean? So how are we getting there, like in your framework, if that's what you would
Right.
pose?
You're saying why draw the moral boundary at human beings? Why not
Yeah,
draw the moral boundary at animals, for example?
yeah.
Right.
Currently, following the framework that like it wouldn't necessitate that our survivability is compromised if we also considered the pig.
Right. Um, I'm going to say that since see the problem is if we consider all life to be sacred, then we'll end up having to go up to plants also because they also come under life. Maybe even bacterial life also will come under that. So we can't necessarily take all life is sacred as the rule that we can go by.
Can I correct?
And
Can I just
then
interject? Is that okay?
sure, 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 sure.
I'm not
Definitely,
saying the word
definitely.
sacred or anything. I'm just saying value it morally, and I do think they're kind of different. And I'd also say I'm not valuing all life. I'm valuing on the basis of sentience. And for me, like
Okay.
a plant is not sentient. You know, cell bacteria not sentient.
Why
So
sentience though? Why sentience?
because sentience is everything that allows for an experience. So, therefore, things that we have gathered to be bad, like we can throw a bad at it, would be the pain,
Mhm.
the the
So
killing, stuff like that. They can
the
experience that. Yeah.
yeah, so if something can experience suffering, then
Mhm.
it should come under the moral consideration of us.
It can experience suffering and can also experience pleasure, like if because it's also bad not only to harm an individual but to, like, when you kill them, I also think it's bad because you've deprived them of everything good that could have happened to them as well. Every pleasing moment they could have experienced is also
Mm,
deprived. So it's the
right, right.
bad
So
and
pleasure and
yeah,
suffering.
yeah.
Again, I can't necessarily cite, but I'm hoping that you would know about this. That plants do release certain chemicals when they're harmed, and there is also the fact that when you play classical music, they end up growing well. Have you heard of these two things?
Yeah, absolutely. And my response to that would be it's a stimuli response. That's what we understand it to be. They don't have a central nervous system. They don't even have nerve ganglia or anything that we know to be
Right.
the vessel to create that subjectivity. And so a computer, when it gets too hot, it we could say it
Hmm.
panics and shuts down. A
Hmm.
calculator, if responds to my numbers, but it's not emoting, it's not feeling, it's not experiencing the world, sort of thing. So that's the distinction.
Hmm. The thing is experiencing the world or even consciousness, right? It is a very contentious subject. It's not a very clear subject. There is the whole philosophical argument that there's Descartes also, that I think therefore I am, that
Hmm.
you cannot necessarily prove an outside world, all of that,
Or
right?
like
So
solipsism.
consciousness is yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very flimsy concept.
Hmm.
Like it's very hard to grasp if you are also a real human being other than me, right?
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
whether or not I'm a human being also, it's annoying. It's annoying is the word here. So the point is, again, we you are identifying central nervous system, right? I am going to let's like stick to empiricism, because what else do we have, honestly?
Hmm.
And the central nervous system is what you're describing, a requirement for the subjective experience, correct? That's
Yeah,
your
and
boundary there.
when we talk about empiricism, there's actually I think it's a peer-reviewed paper on. It's a statement against plant consciousness. So we have the consensus
Hmm.
that animals have been declared sentient, and we have a
Hmm.
consensus currently that plants are not sentient. But if you'd like, I can actually make a vegan
Hmm.
argument while plants are sentient. I can do that.
I mean, probably can, right? But my even if the point is, even if we do end up proving that animals are sentient and plants are not, right? We've drawn that boundary.
Mhm.
There is still the question of why sentience, right? Is it an arbitrary thing that we're just like simply deciding, or is it based on some external metric
I
or
think
universal metric?
I think it's one of those, like, what you would call an axiom. It's just assumed that like a lot of bad and good is going to come from an individual experiencing it. Like it wouldn't, like, if I slam my table right now, I have done the only harm I could have possibly done is if I made you scared or affected you in any way by slamming the table, but I've done nothing to the table because the table's not a subject. So I don't know why I'd be compelled to be concerned with the table if they're not sentient.
Right.
There'd be no
At least
moral
consciousness and
consideration.
sentience as we, yeah. uh, I get that. So you're saying that it should be an like axiomatic thing, that this is the basic axiom of ethics, that sentience is required in order to for that thing to be considered within ethics.
Yeah, like
Is that what you're
I
getting
acknowledge it's a presupposition. I think when you go further and further, you're going to end up ultimately at presuppositions wherever you go. And my
for
presupposition
sure?
is that sentience is an important metric in the good and the bad, the pain and the suffering, that sort of thing.
So the reason we don't question a lot of presuppositions, for example, supposition of what do you call it, units in mathematics,
Mm-hmm.
or the supposition of logical, like the supposition of induction within empiricism and science,
Yes.
is because it's impractical to go beyond it, and it ends up breaking logical consistency and our ability to understand the world. That is
Yeah.
the reason we give a pass to those particular things. But
Mm-hmm.
if I, let's say, don't stop at sentience, right? I am someone who does not believe in your axiom that
Yes.
sentience is important for suffering to occur, and suffering is important.
I've met many like
That
that.
that doesn't, yeah. So that doesn't necessarily break reality, right? That just makes it so I do not follow your ethical model, but it doesn't break reality for me. It doesn't cause any overall harm to logic. It doesn't like affect me in any real sense, except for not being able to come within your ethical standard.
To what I
That's all
understand,
it's going to do.
yeah, to what I understand, if it will not break reality, which is hard for me to say because obviously I'm bootstrapping to sentience so
But that's
heavily.
your ethical standard, right?
Yeah,
Ethical
but
standard is still
yeah,
like
like,
a big
but,
thing that you're doing it.
but if I'm
Yeah.
if from what I've understood to it, all you're doing is breaking my preferences and leading to what, if we follow the logic where you didn't value sentience, it would follow logical conclusions that I would deem absurd, and I would
Okay.
be pretty sure that you as a sentient
Mm-hmm.
being would also
Mm-hmm.
find those conclusions absurd. So what I'm doing a lot of the time is I'm trying to show someone that they probably share my preferences in many
Mm-hmm.
senses, and
Mm-hmm.
that would lead to veganism. So that's
So
where I
kind
go
of
with it.
like, you already share my ethical framework, you just don't quite get it yet. That
Well,
kind of
that
thing.
obviously I've spoken to people who insist that that's not their ethical framework, but I think as a subject, like a sentient being, it's often going to be the case that someone's going to value sentience because they value their own. So
Right.
yeah.
I mean, but if that is the case, then that's assuming they value sentience and not their own survival and their species as the cutoff point, right? Like you're appealing to their emotional understanding of the world, in a sense.
Maybe their emotional understanding, but also the logical conclusion, because if they value their survival, I do think that it follows you have to value their sentience, because their sentience, like, is their existence, and their survival is maintaining that existence. So when you
I mean,
say I value my survival and I value my sentence, my sentience, to me they're kind of synonymous. Am I wrong there?
right. The reason, yeah, yeah, I guess like valuing survival could be, in a very specific context, be equivalent to sentience, in the
Okay.
sense that I value me having an experience, but there is also the biological drive that does not really care that whether or not I am having a certain sort of experience, or the fact that I can experience shit, it will keep me alive. That is the reason people also exist in coma. Is because the body is like, no, 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 you're not going to die. You're going to survive this.
Can I ask, like,
It's not optional. Yeah.
yeah, when people make these comments about like instinctual drive, natural biological drives, I think it's kind of confusing to me because I think of myself as like, you know, an ape. And I try and think of all the biological drives I may have that, like, what percent, I don't know if I'm trying to percentage something that maybe shouldn't, but how much of us is actually
Doesn't
a
matter.
biological instinctual drive? Because, like, when you look, I can see there's a drive for survival for sure. Like when a
Hmm.
car is driving at me at 50 miles an hour, I run. Like, you know.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know how much of that is driving me at any given moment as like a human in the modern world now.
It depends on your entirely depends on your like metaphysical stance, right?
Mm,
If you're a materialist, then 110% of everything is biology. It just becomes more and more sophisticated. In a
right,
sense, like there is
okay.
the argument that consciousness only came into existence after we developed language, right? Because once we develop language, even in the most basic terms, not like just like this is goo goo gaga, this is ia ua, like something like that,
Yeah.
that is when we learn to differentiate these two things from each other, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
when we
this is
started
different
doing
from this is not.
binaries, because this, because this is not this. Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
so so maybe conscious experience came after there is some form of arbitrary language, so sentience could be tied back to that. That is what and therefore language and abstraction, everything, even our feelings, thoughts, justice, love, it is just again a product of biological evolution over time. And so like I mean there is the thing that, right, if I have to pick if I have to decide whether or not I'm going to pick this up, my brain has already made the decision 7 seconds before I ever think of doing this,
Mm-hmm.
ever think of doing this. It's already done. So a hardcore materialist would say every single thing is like predetermined, every single thing is biology. Then if your metaphysical stance is, let's say, more theistic in nature, if you're let's say a judeo-christian person, then you're going to like cite the bible, because that is factual reality for you. That is how things are. So everything will be god adjacent and everything would be according to the bible. Same with
Mm.
hinduism, same with every other thing. So entirely depends on your belief system, very honestly.
Yeah, I don't know how long I've spent kind of working out whether I'm a materialist because in my brain right now I'm running through things that I might do or desire, and like some of it's very antithetical to survival, but then I'm questioning it because it's like, oh, well, it is a survival thing. It's just been hacked. Like, say, for example,
Right.
with seeking fatty calorific foods, we do that. It's not contingent on survival now because we have an abundance of food, and it actually shortens our lifespan potentially to be eating in a calorie surplus. However, was a naturalistic kind of survival instinct before to be attached to high calorie foods to ensure our survival because we didn't know when our next meal was coming. So I can't really say I'm sure if I am a materialist or not. I'd have to think about that further. But I suppose I feel like I don't, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like we are going down tangents slightly, like we are exploring things because it's very interesting. Or do you think we're staying very topical?
I think we've like we are actually looking at the core foundation of veganism. We're like actually questioning and trying to make up a framework where it does make sense,
Okay.
right?
Oh, I
Because
remember where we are now. I'm so sorry. So you made the claim that veganism is about not killing animals through compassion and equality. Was that correct?
Yeah, I said there are two ways that you go about veganism.
Mm-hmm.
One is there's the compassion aspect, that is aspect A, that we are empathetic and therefore we do things which are compassionate. And the B is the fact that we look at ourselves as some sort of at least highly advanced or responsible for the life of other species.
Yeah, responsible. Yeah. So I would just argue um, that firstly, veganism. Now, people do argue about this, but from my understanding, veganism is fundamentally against the exploitation of animals. It doesn't like there could be instances where you kill an animal within the framework of veganism. but it's fundamentally about not commodifying them, not seeing them as objects in the world that we can use for our own benefit. So that could be through compassion, but I'd argue I do know
Mhm.
people who don't have compassion for animals who are non-human. So you could then say, okay, well, that comes to the idea that they are then saying we believe ourselves to be responsible for ensuring we don't harm others or exploit others. So
Right.
you
I'm
could
saying that to
yeah
be a vegan, you have to be either A or B both. A
yeah
is being compassionate, B is being like responsible, and either of those or both.
yeah. I'm just trying to think if because it's not necessarily the case. Like say for example, I'm putting it in the human context. I don't have to say if I say I'm a complete misanthrope. I hate people so much. Like I don't care if they live or die. Um, I could also think I don't need to be responsible for them, but I could still leave them alone and not exploit them, right? So it's
Right.
logically it's physically possible to there's something else driving that. And I would
I mean,
argue that it's the
why do you
sentience
leave them alone? Like, question that. Like, what was the purpose of you leaving them alone?
because they're
What
sentient.
motivated that act?
The sentience aspect for sure.
Mm,
Because
sure.
in my mind, when I try and obviously, you don't know exactly what's driving you, arguably. But when I like had the argument with myself over veganism, and was trying to tell myself, no, you can keep eating animals, you can keep buying what you want, like whatever. I was like, no, like doesn't matter if I care about them. It doesn't matter, like I don't have some sort of necessarily responsibility or anything, but they, like me, feel they can suffer, they can experience joy, and I take that away from them. Like, so
So
the
it's
sentience is
so it's
being.
empathy and compassion, right?
I wouldn't go as far as to say empathy because you can value sentience without the empathy. Like, you can be a complete, like, you could be,
Right,
yeah.
but like if you are valuing sentience, that is inherently empathetic because you're identifying with yourself, right? Just like how I am sentient, they are also sentient, and hence I should not kill them. I think the logic follows.
That's just tough because I actually know people who are, um, what's the
You
word
don't have to
for
be kind. You can be empathetic and you can not be kind,
No,
right?
the reason I'm saying is just because I am being pedantic here, but I know people who are diagnosed sociopathic. They lack empathy completely, and they are vegan. So, and they don't. They are not necessarily. So I guess you could put that down to compassionate thinking, not empathetic. So
Mm,
that would be an act of compassion. I would grant that. It's just they're
right.
not
I mean,
putting
the
themselves
reason,
in their shoe.
yeah, the thing with psychometric evaluations, especially even like ASPD and other things,
Hmm.
is that there are like a couple of metrics that you have to check,
Yes.
and the biggest thing is how much you deviate from the culture you were born in, right?
Hmm.
So if they're extremely less empathetic towards other people within their culture, that can be counted as a sociopath. That does not mean they are absent with the ability to empathize. Maybe their empathy is strictly limited in like the sense of empathizing or being kind to other people. A lot of even evaluators, even therapists, they make the mistake of like confusing empathy with kindness,
Yes.
confusing empathy with niceness. So
Yes.
that's a whole issue as well.
Yeah.
I might understand, right? I might be just a manipulative person. I'll be like, I am the reason I am able to be manipulative is because I have high empathy, right? Because I
Yes.
can understand and predict how you're going to think
Hmm.
is the reason I'm able to manipulate you.
You know,
Every manipulator has a high
I
empathy.
complete. I agree with the concept that you can easily manipulate if you have a high empathy, and I'm just pointing on this because I have I come to understand because I'd falsely synonymized empathy with kindness that I don't I have pretty low empathy probably I probably have higher compassion so
Actually gave me an idea. So, like, I'll need to revise my earlier statement of point A and point B. There is a point C, right?
okay
So, point A is compassion, point B is responsibility, and point C is empathy. Empathy or
okay
compassion would be different,
okay
right? So, there are three things.
I
Yeah.
think, yeah, just like changing for the instead of killing animals, we're talking about like rejecting the exploitation of animals. I would probably then say that that's suitable, like I can comport with that.
Right. I mean, so you're saying killing is fine, but you should not exploit animals. Is
It's
that,
not
am
that
I getting
killing
that
is
right?
it's not that killing is fine. It's that exploitation is the main metric that we focus on, because say for example vegans aren't
Okay, you're not
like,
making a statement on killing, you're just making a statement of exploitation. That is what you're against, exploitation.
yeah, like there can be statements on killing, but that's not like, so for example, just to give a real life kind of example, it's not the case that vegans on aggregate are against cars or transport in any way, because animals do get killed. They're going to get killed. Like, of course, vegans may worry about, making pedestrianized zones for the animals, considering them more. But they don't on aggregate go against transport. But animals do get killed. And I think you can be a human rights advocate while not being against transport,
Mhm,
even though
mhm,
humans get killed.
mhm,
So it's
mhm,
like the human
mhm,
exploitation would be the human rights
mhm.
activists' problem, right?
Right. So, in a hypothetical world, let's say corporate takeover and industrialization completely collapses, right? We have a
Mm-hmm.
nuclear winter, things go back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
In that society, when there is no mass production, there is no dairy industry, and people do kill animals to eat, will you say that act is not something that veganism is going to say anything against? Because there is no sort of exploitation as such. People are killing to survive, people are killing to live, people are killing for food rather than mass producing them like what do you call carrots
it
animals
it
and
would
like
still
exploiting them.
be an issue if there is a different route someone could take. Like for example, say an axe murderer came into my house and went to kill me, and I had the only way I was going to survive was if I killed them. That was the only way.
Mm-hmm.
But if
Mm-hmm.
I had other ways and they came into my house and I killed them, then the context is going to start
Mm-hmm.
changing. So, yeah, like I would say, like, you can still be a human rights activist, but you're on a desert island
Mm-hmm.
and you've eaten a human to survive. You could still be, I would say, you
Right.
could still be a human rights activist. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
if you are on a desert island with loads of bananas and you eat the
Mm-hmm.
human, it's going to start looking like you're
Mm-hmm.
not a human rights activist, right?
So it's like not a very strong definite boundary, it's more of a ethical preference.
Hmm, let me. I just want to make sure. No, it is considered, definitely. It is definitely something that you take into account, just as you would in the context of the desert island. There's loads of bananas. There's a human. The killing of the human would be
Right,
considered.
right, right. Uh-huh. So essentially the same thing, the hierarchic thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I can eat a banana, I should either eat a banana rather than a live chicken in
Mm-hmm.
that post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah.
But let's say I need protein. Let's say I'm very weak and there is no other source of protein, so I have to eat that animal. Will that be fine, or is it even more extreme in the sense that if I have literally nothing to eat, then I'm going to eat a chicken? Doesn't matter protein, doesn't matter carbohydrates, all of those things do not matter. As long as I can live, even if I have to live with deficiencies, that is fine.
Yeah, that would be the survival versus thriving sort of thing, right?
Right.
It's the case that people can subsist on low protein diets. Like if you've got a protein deficiency, you've got 1,000 things wrong with you probably before then. But I
I
just get
mean, my
caught.
entire country is protein deficient.
I think the whole of the UK is probably protein, like not very good with the protein, because eating high protein isn't. You have to think about it a little bit, like vegan or not. Um,
I mean, I can attest to what happens to a society when, like, in general, even meat eaters and everyone else just doesn't, it don't eat enough protein. It causes a lot of issues. Life expectancy has gone down by a bunch. Old people are not mobile. People have like they have guts, like, and it's not fatty guts. It's like his stomach's blowing up. They are
mhm.
weak. They have so many diseases. Blood pressures on the rise. Like strength training does not work, a bunch of factors. So it is a net detriment to society. It may be even to brain development, but I have not read any studies, so I'm not going to make a comment on that. But visible effects are there if you have a low protein diet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I guess I get caught up because say you are on a desert island and you do eat someone. I don't I don't know what I don't think I have the language to explain how I feel about it. I don't know if it's
Mhm.
fine. It just I understood
Mhm.
why it happened. Like,
Right.
and I will
So
not like pass the moral
so it
judgment that I would have if they like had the bananas there but they ate the human instead.
will you accept a society which doesn't eat animals but has all of these issues that I have outlined, like in society, right? Like lower life expectancy, much higher cases of diabetes, heart issues, those like unhealthy guts in that sense, digestive issues, and maybe certain sort of brain issues also, although I'm not going to stick to it. But
Mhm.
like human life expectancy, quality of life, and health all go down by like significant margins, like 10-15% at least. If that is the case, will you accept that society, uh, if that does not eat meat, or a thriving society would be to your preference which does eat
I
meat?
would have to accept the first one because, in my viewpoint, I don't see a morally significant difference between humans and other animals that would justify it.
Hmm. What do you I mean, do we have a president, or like do we have an example of this in nature other than human beings, of animals who would do this, like sacrifice their own like health and life expectancy in order to save some other animal's life?
There are some like observed instances where, for example, there was this starving lioness and she held on to a deer
Hmm.
and looked after her like she was her own baby. So you
Right.
could think of, we don't exactly know what's going on there fully, right? But I can think when you say that, I think of an instance. But even let's
Hmm.
grant they don't.
I mean, I'm just like trying to understand if that exists in nature or not, or if it is a like new standard that we're introducing that is not based in nature, maybe based in something else.
It probably, I'm inclined to believe it does exist, but it's probably not the majority, right?
Right. I mean, exceptional
Yeah.
cases to exist across like humanity also, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Exactly.
insane people. So, I mean, if there was like, let's say, a decent enough percentage of animals, also, if let's say 1% of what do you call, and lions did this, or 0.1% of lions did this, then perhaps we can make an argument. But if we
Mm-hmm.
have like only a handful of cases, then like I'm not sure if we can count that as a like a population-wide phenomena or a
No, no, no.
species-wide phenomena at
Yeah.
all, right? So I think it is fair to say that in nature, at least as far as we understand nature, as far as our understanding and observation of nature is considered, these things, like veganism, or like saving other species at the cost of your own thriving, does not exist.
Yeah.
Sure. So this is again, so when we introduce this new standard to human beings, right, the question becomes, what is this new standard like based on? Is there like a universal thing? Is there like an external standard we're driving this from? For example, when people make the claim that meat eating should be allowed, they are always reliant on nature, right? Sometimes they're religious texts. Both of those two things are claiming universality in one way or the other. But if we are introducing a philosophical argument, we have to uh, do one thing. We have to prove that it is foundationally true, right? That it has the least amount of assumptions, and logic will break if we do not take those assumptions. That is one thing. Or we have to figure out another what do you call, system, that we can rely on an external universal metric, that this is where this standard comes from.
I would contest that case because it is the case that an evangelical Christian who is a moral realist, you know, and presupposes everything to God, they can have a discussion with an atheist who is a subjectivist about murder being wrong or killing being wrong and therefore being called murder. So they haven't come to an agreement that there's a foundational viewpoint that is the truth. Like, but they've come to agree that that would be wrong to do, right? So I would contest that.
Within people perhaps, right? But I'm just like talking about like systems
Okay.
as they exist, moral systems, right? There is the there is morals have to fall back on some foundationality, right? Because we're claiming objectivity, we're claiming universality. So
Oh
what does
no.
it rely on?
Just to be clear, I'm not claiming objectivity or realism or anything. Like I think I'm a subjectivist. So all I'm telling you right now is I'm telling you my preferences, and I want other
Right.
people to share those preferences. So
Okay, so
I'm not
it's
claiming
simply, yeah,
universality. Yeah.
I get it. I get. So it's not like this is the ethical standard, right? There is that there is those portions of vegans also which say that this is a universal and a superior ethical model, and therefore it should be followed.
Yeah.
These are the two things that should exist in that, right? If let's the moment you surrender universality, right, the moment you say that it is subjective to me, then everyone has the right to simply denounce it. Everyone can say that, okay, that is according to you, according to me that is not the case, I will keep eating meat. But if you prove that no, universally sentience matters, universally you should save animals, that is the ethical standard, then they become immoral for eating animals, and then they have an incentive to change.
Are you an objectivist?
I mean, I'm a truth seeker, so like I try to be like objective. I understand that most objectivity exists within frames, metaphysical frames,
Yeah.
but at the very least they claim universality, right? At least they
Yeah.
have some way to universality.
So
Just at least the foundation should be, yeah.
so I guess I'm asking, like, is right or wrong in your view mind independent? Sorry to go into meta ethics here, but yeah, I'm just wondering,
Hmm.
like on Mars,
Depends on your frame.
could there be bad
Dep
things happening?
Depends. I mean, you'll have to firstly define your frame, right? So, if you, let's say, a materialist, right, or let's say like hardcore materialist, you're
Mm.
going to say that morals exist within human society, and morals, like every other abstract concept, even love, war, family, values, they are motivated by simply two things, which is reproduction and survival, which is ultimately survival. And those are the core functions, and morals are again just a tool that human beings use in order to be like survive and fulfill their biological imperative. That is the what do you call materialist plans. Then a Christian will say that God gave 10 commandments, God gave morals, so whatever God says is universal and it is morally correct or incorrect. And so goes for like other ethical standards also. Like they have they are all claiming a sort of universality. Even when you are claiming the fact that morals are based simply in reproduction or simply in survival, that is still a universal claim. You're not because again then all life follows that based on observable evidence, and then we're making the foundational assumption that all life will follow that. So everything, every moral system, I believe, every moral system by its very nature does claim some sort of universality. Otherwise it's not a moral system, it's more so a preference standard.
Mm-hmm. But just to be clear, do you claim to be an objectivist or a subjectivist?
Hmm. I believe in objectivity within frames and an ontological, or what do you call it, epistemological objectivity. Those two exist, but I understand that practically it will be subjective because there will be different frames, right? I mean, how do I? Let me just actually draw this much easier.
Yeah. Oh, you got a whiteboard and everything. Oh yeah.
If you watch my videos, I'm like heavy on the whiteboard, right? So let's assume this is like reality or truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
The foundation, ultimate truth. Now, whether it is religion, morals, metaphysics, God, truth, whatever, everything is simply trying to reach this, right?
Okay.
Now, uh, when let's say three people exist, a materialist, religious person, and a spiritual person,
Okay.
not a religious person. And now what do they say is that this I have they have three tunnels, right? And they say, see, my tunnel gets you to truth. That is their understanding. They say, see, my tunnel gets you to truth. See, my tunnel gets you to truth. That is what they're saying. So within this circle, I'm still objective. Here I'm still objective. But if I take this stance and I'm just looking at all three, I'm going to say, but technically it is subjective, right? In application, it is subjective because there is a world in which three people exist who have three different opinions on truth. But
Mm-hmm.
within the system, objective within, and obviously there is, I do believe there is a complete objectivity, complete capital T truth also, which does exist. That is what I'm trying to communicate. So
Okay.
I am of the position that yes, objectivity exists. It exists here and it
Mm-hmm.
exists here, right? But most of the world is looking at this pillar. So in practice, it does not exist. But it does exist, metaphysically speaking. It does exist. What do you call? When you are trying to understand the world, you have to do it by an objective standard. Otherwise, you are understanding no world.
Yeah, I do. I'd say I do some stuff by an objective standard, by like looking at it, like what it says, what it means, sorts of things. But like when I'm thinking of an objectivist, from my understanding, they think that right and wrong exists independent of a mind. But for a subjectivist, my understanding is it's more like they have a set of preferences, they have their beliefs and their viewpoints and their experiences that have led them to believe as a subject what is right or wrong. But like, I suppose like your claim before, because there's many things I want to ask about this, but I don't have all the time in the world, unfortunately. I wish I did, because this is interesting. But yeah, like your claim is, in order to, now correct me if I'm wrong, I'll just say it and then you can make the correction and I'll write it down.
Sure.
Veganism, in order to kind of, this is like a newer concept, you know, it's been around, you know, thousands of years, but it's new in the scheme of things. And in order to compete with the, you know, the dominant viewpoint, it has to have some sort of, make some sort of universal claim. Is that the...
Yes, it should have a universal standard or universal like foundation in its belief system. It should prove why it is a universal ethical standard, and then prove that why it is better than everyone else.
So when I say, because there's, in my view, or and in the view of others, there cannot be a morally significant difference between a human and another non-human animal that would justify exploiting them in those contexts. Where...
Right, so I can fall back on naturalism. I can be like, it there is basis on our biology, and I'm like putting my faith in evolution when I say evolution is my universal standard. Or maybe I'm putting my faith in a religion. I'm saying my god allowed me to eat animals, and that is
Mhm.
universal. So my both of my arguments then are both of my standards are then universal. And then I'm claiming objectivity while you're claiming subjectivity,
Mhm.
right? Just by logic alone, then like my argument or my stance becomes more enticing, and it becomes more true, because there is a claim to objectivity, so there is a chance at objectivity. You're not even taking that chance.
I would argue so when it comes to the subjective kind of arguments. So, say for example, you said, "Oh my God," say you were, you know, a Christian. You said, my God said that it's morally permissible for me to eat the animals. I can eat the animals. Well, then I would just then do an internal critique. That's where I would go, and I'd go, well, your God said that if you mix fabrics, you'll be stoned to death, or something to that effect. Or
Right.
if your wife is assaulted or your sister is assaulted, you go out and stone her. Like, would you follow those views? And often it's the case that they don't follow their own viewpoint. So that's where it goes.
Right. But the thing is, then you're simply like targeting the person, right? Like, you don't do this, so your argument is you are incorrect, right? You are,
You were
as a person, are
inconsistent.
not consistent with a
Mm-hmm.
viewpoint, inconsistent, right?
Yeah.
But you're not disproving that argument itself, right? You're not disproving the fact that god saying eating animals is right is not a cool standard, right? That person is simply championing his religion, right? Maybe that person is hypocritical, maybe that person does not follow his religion. That makes it so this person is not a what do you call, an authority. But that religion's claim does stand, that
Well,
yeah,
my
eat
argument
animals.
would be it wouldn't be a good argument because it's not consistent. Like, it's not consistently applied.
It's not consistent, but the application does not the application or the practicality of it, right? Or like how well it is being followed does not mean that the standard itself is worse. For example, there is a difference between capitalism and socialism, or capitalism and communism,
Mhm.
right? So we can agree that on, like, you can, when you argue capitalism and communism, the fair way to do it is by looking at how are they in theory, and what is the standard, because you're comparing two systems, you're not comparing their practicality or their application within different sorts of societies. That's arguing with examples rather than arguing with the concept. So when you are arguing an ethical standard, you have to argue with concepts, right? I have to prove that this ethical abstract standard that I'm asking people to prescribe by is more universal, is more objective, and is more true or better than whatever the current standard they're following, or current standard they're championing, they're saying is the right standard.
Well, I would argue that you are showing that it's more correct, more true by showing the inconsistencies in the system. So, showing that they don't actually follow that. Because I do think it is the case that probably most people are subjectivists, and then a lot of the philosophers, most of them are objectivists. I do think that, like, a lot of people, even if they are following some sort of objective framework, like say that they've got God presupposing everything, and that is the, you know, the goodness and everything like that, I don't think they even necessarily view it that way. Like, I might be wrong, but
Mhm.
I don't think where if people have had a good think about it, I don't think they think something to be wrong based upon anything other than what they don't like and what they do like the preferences, the subjectivity.
I mean, see, individual people are individual people, right? At the end of the day, we are trying to introduce a ethical standard.
Mm-hmm.
And an ethical standard, by its very definition, is philosophical in nature, abstract in nature, right? So we have to stick within the abstract realm and prove why it is better. Only then do you work as an ethical standard. Otherwise, you're working from a more practical standpoint. Then you're talking about application standards. Then people can simply argue that meat is cheaper for me, meat is more easily available for me,
Mm.
and you have not proven any ethical universality, so why should I follow you,
Okay, so
right? I'll just eat the cheaper thing.
I know vegan objectivists who argue the same as I do, but instead of it being a preference, for them, it's just the case that a sentient being, it is wrong
Mhm.
to violate their rights. Like, you know, that you've got like people who follow Hegel, who are objectivists, who see it as a kind of threshold deontology aspect of like you have a duty to that individual. Like, so you could take the objectivist stance and have a universal claim that the sentience is the important component. So,
Right, and then I can simply press on where does, like, why is sentience the important aspect and not anything else? Why is that the standard? Where is that universality coming from? That is how philosophical arguments or ethical
yeah,
arguments become, right? You have to make it foundational.
I'm just trying
With
to,
religions, the
yeah.
point is they are making it foundational. That is the reason they win out, because they're saying this book is the word of God, God is creator, God decided ethics, God is truth, and therefore this is the standard. They're very clear cut on that. While on the other hand, when you're arguing, oh, the reason is sentience, then you have to prove why sentience and why not anything else, why draw the boundary there. It's a
Why,
whole thing.
why do
If you
you
do not have, yeah.
why do you
Hmm?
have to, if you are an objectivist who just your foundational view is that sentience itself is something to be universally respected or
Uh,
considered?
the thing is, yeah, a lot of people assume that philosophy just like comes out of randomly out of people, right? And like they're just like, Plato makes the sun, then he makes the cave, he does that imagination, he says it's universal, and everyone is clapping.
Mhm,
If philosophy was this simple, everyone would be a philosopher.
mhm.
But it's not. The point is, the play the claim is just the starting aspect, right? Now you are saying that sentience is the universal standard, the core axiom. Now you'll have to prove why is it the core axiom, why not anything else. That is the second step. Unless and until we are completely thorough that say yes, sentience is, and this is why, I have proven this deductively, logically, I've used deductive reasoning to get there, and that is the reason sentience is true and the ethical standard. Only then you can make it a philosophical stance. Otherwise, it will always be a subjective preference.
Okay,
of
so
sorts.
the current thing is that like an objectivist is like not vegan, so sentience is not being valued. So what would they say as an objectivist against veganism being the philosophy to adopt?
They would simply say that vegans draw an arbitrary boundary, right? They just decide that the boundary of ethics should start at sentience and not at life and not at species and not at anywhere else on the spectrum.
Where would they put it?
When That again, like, that depends on whatever framework they're buying into, right? If they're buying into materialistic framework for their ethical standard, they put it on the survival thing. If they are religious, they'll put it on those particular religions and their universal claims.
But
It ends up being like that.
but it'd be my view that all of those are going to be presupposed with some sort of axiom.
Right, but the point is all of them somehow tie into truth. That is the main thing.
Sentience could
All
tie
of them
into
try into
truth.
cap it. Yeah, even how?
In the same way, like the current, see, if we're saying the current system is universal and it's like against veganism or not pro-veganism, or current not veganism at least, it's making these claims in the inverse. So you could just flip it around, no?
You'll have to like elaborate on that because I'm like having a hard time picturing this.
Well, currently, so you're saying, and I'd like to address this, but we'll do that in a minute. You're saying in order to combat the current viewpoint that is not veganism,
Hmm.
you need some sort of
Hmm.
universal claim about, that makes veganism the case. So currently,
Hmm.
there are objectivists who make a universal claim that's not veganism or maybe even anti-veganism. What are they claiming?
Right. They're claiming that eating animals is fine ethically.
So that
And
they,
why is that universal? Why is that
yeah,
fine universally? Where are they deriving those ethics from? That is the second question, right? One person is a materialist. He says that I'm deriving it from evolution. It happens in nature. It is the natural law. It is basis on our survivability. And other animals also do this. Therefore, we should do this. They're like using nature as proxy for their universal standards. Nature is their way to reach a universal standard for life. That is how they reach it. And the other person says, see, my God told me drink
mm-hmm.
wine, eat pork, and therefore my God, because my God is the truth, is the one who decides ethics. If he says it is okay, it is okay, right? So all of them have some form of connect to a universal standard. This is universal, this is true. The point is, when I say that I shouldn't eat animals because sentience matters, and sentience is where I draw the boundary of harm at. Now, I don't necessarily stand on any universal ground, right? I just decided that sentience should be the ground. I don't have any way from there to reach any universal standard. I'm simply stopping there. I'm making the claim, and I'm not uh, like using any logic, or I'm not even making a universal claim, or any, see, I'm making a universal claim, but I'm not substantiating it with like some way to reach truth.
Okay.
I just decided it randomly. Yeah.
So I'm obviously not a philosopher, but in my brain, saying nature is the universal is just as arbitrary as saying sentience or experience is the universal. I don't see a difference. Like I could bootstrap everything to nature. I could
Yeah.
bootstrap everything to God. I could bootstrap everything to sentience, the ability to experience.
True. Yeah. uh, that is because you don't you're not coming within their frame, right? If you are a materialist, if you believe in evolution and everything, you understand that the big bang happened, naturally things happened,
Mm-hmm.
species evolved, life from the very beginning was all about survival and propagation, right? And that is how we evolved. So no matter what I do, even if I pick this bottle, in some indirect way it is about survival and reproduction.
Mm-hmm.
Every single thing. They do not believe in a free will, right?
Mm-hmm.
They simply believe everything ties back to those two things, because that is the intrinsic property of something. Just like how H2O reacts with other chemicals in a certain way, that is how deterministic everything is for human beings. And since animals or natural standard that we have of how to operate is about eating others and like eating other species, that is closer to how things should be, and therefore that is universal in that way. right? That is why they can fall back on nature, because nature ultimately, it's observation based. Essentially, it is how an empiricist would end up defining ethics if he were to go into that.
To
And
me,
religion is religion.
yeah, it's, to
They
me,
have universal
sentience
basis.
can be observation based as well. Because otherwise, like, I'm just observing other people feeling. It could be the case that I live in a solipsistic universe and you don't
Sentience, yeah,
exist.
sentience is observation based, yes,
Yeah.
but drawing the ethical boundary at sentience might not be.
I would say the same for
That is
nature.
something that you decide.
Yeah, I can't see the distinction between that and like nature still. So I think what we should do is go, because in the interest of time, I have to make dinner. But there's two things I'd want to say. I think it's the case that yes, if someone is an objectivist, you may want to make some sort of universal claim, and this is far past my IQ, where you would how you'd use language in order to kind of show that. But it is the case that vegans, like I do outreach. I've been doing it for years. I've been talking to people on the streets. I've been debating people, all these sorts of things. Some people have changed their viewpoint and attributed it to a conversation we've had, and they've come from different walks of life. They've been Christians, they've been agnostic, they've had all different kind of positions, some very wild to me. But I've managed to just communicate with them, the case that veganism is something that they would wish to follow. So I'm not convinced that you have to just have a universal claim. Like, it could, like, I'm just looking at it as other social justice movements, for example, like with the women's rights movement. Women didn't want to be property. They wanted to have autonomy in their marriages and everything like that. So they protested, they communicated with people. It didn't have to be the case that, universally man and woman are like equal, that there is equality. It's just the case that you could argue, well, a woman is a sentient being, they experience like a man does, and it would be unjustified to violate their autonomy as a result. You could make that argument. I don't see
Yeah,
how I would
i'm going
need.
to I'm going to come off as like I probably might be cancelled for this, but
Oh no.
the all the different social revolutions of sorts with that we've had, whether it would be anti-slavery, whether it be like women coming into the workforce, birth control, and like taking their station in
Mm-hmm.
society, I believe you can classify that as uh, change,
Mm-hmm.
neutral change. It is a change that happened within society, and it happened for their individual and group interest, right? Whether or not it was ethically good will always be a universal argument. For that, you'll have to have some sort of universal basis of ethics. That is the thing.
Well, I
You
guess.
can, for
Mm-hmm.
example, yeah, whether or not it is ethically good or not, whether or not you can call it good or bad, that always ends up like becoming about morality, which and always has to be universal, or it is simply like words stop meaning shit.
Yeah, it might be the case that it could be universally neutral, but when I'm talking to someone like yourself, I'm just asking you what you think about it. So it's always in
Yeah,
reference to you. Whether or not it's your
I mean,
preference, whether or not you believe it to be a universal truth. I want to know whether or not,
personally,
like,
yeah.
the woman having the autonomy would be a good for you, you know?
See, the way that I have been raised, the values that I have been given, they show me that yes, I mean, my immediate community has taught me that equality is a good thing. My immediate community has taught me that people getting opportunities is a good thing, and they have taught me that no matter what your sex, what your gender, what your race, you're equal. And that is the reason I believe in those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is like mimetic in that sense.
Yes.
uh, but when you're making a ethical standard, right, when you're introducing a new ethical standard, uh, you have to make it universal. Otherwise, it can't compete with the pre-established status quo, right? Because people already are comfortable doing it, people have their particular reasoning, but the major issue is they're already complacent in that.
And
If you introduce an ethical standard that you should like completely change around your life, now it should be like basis on some form of truth, some form of universality.
I'm going to contest this, like, in the sense that the way the thing that's stopping me right now, okay, is
Mhm.
I'm looking at the world, I'm looking at history. I can't see any person who has agreed with everyone about a framework. So we constantly, there's all these arguments. Is it objective? Is it subjective? Is it God? Is it not God? Is it, a flying spaghetti monster? Like, people have argued since they could argue about where it's coming from, but a Christian and an atheist have been able to agree that killing a human being would be wrong. So the claim that you have to introduce this.
It's extremely universal, right? So like, it's so universal because, why is it so universal? Why do they agree? Because materially they have that biological thing in their head which says no, 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 don't kill a human being. But with the same standard they do kill animals, right? There is no for some people there is, but naturally the way we've evolved, we have killed animals, so that is not very strong. At least we have survived on them for food, and we don't seem to have, not as a rule. Definitely there are cohorts of people, due to their empathy, due to their understanding, they have much issue if they have to kill animals. But as a species we have been killing animals, right? So the biological argument is just not there for that.
Well, no, the thing is, as a
but
species,
the but it is there for killing.
as a species, we have killed each other and even eaten each other, and it is a natural occurrence. Even though
But
the obviously nature, I'm not asserting some sort of desire to it, but it seems that its its main objective, not inserting desire,
we
is to reproduce, right? Is to multiply, and people and non-human animals have eaten each other, so that could arguably not be in many ways
I
beneficial to
mean
survival, but it happens. So even in the human context.
it, when you do kill a human being, it has been like shown that it causes like intense amount of psychological distress, even bodily reactions, right? If a human being's body is burning, I am from India, we do a lot of cremation, right? If that smoke, you inhale that smoke, it instinctively repulsed enough that you want to puke.
Can
That is a
I?
physical reaction
Yeah,
that
can I
happens.
contest?
Yeah.
It's the same in the non-human animal context. There's literally army veterans and firefighters who get a PTSD response when they smell bacon frying.
I'm not saying they don't like exist, right? I'm not saying cohorts of those people don't exist. But if we have been killing animals for a very long time, for big, or at least most of our evolution, uh, that means we do have an adaptation in which that might not cause us distress. Otherwise, we would not be as a rule eating animals, right? It would be a very exceptional thing that happens once in a while.
No, because we typically think it's wrong to kill humans, but on aggregate, we're killing humans by the thousands, the hundreds of thousands every year. So I think it's
Yeah,
just the case that humans can have
definitely.
a value but contradict the value.
I think that's the model in the beginning still fits in this, right? Like individual survival, then like immediate community survival, so on and so forth, till humanity. And then there is a big psychological relief, and then there is like killing animals and like all of that. It comes higher and higher. Uh, See, the main contention that I ultimately end up having with veganism is the universality of it, right? I can think of a way to make it universal though, because I'm getting a sort of an idea for that also. If I want to steel man veganism to
Mm-hmm.
make it a universal ethical standard. So if I have to go there, I would simply say that uh, uh, we have introduced the hierarchy, right? So we are simply setting the moral standard up a sense of hierarchy, in the sense that we're not stopping at human beings, we're stopping at not kill animals.
Mm-hmm.
Why? It fits into a biologic, a new sort of evolution, in the sense that uh, abstract concepts that like love and war are not present within nature, right? But it does happen when you're evolved enough. That is when you develop language, that is when you develop technology, that is when you develop tools, that is when you develop a different sort of intelligence, right? Intelligence is also a tangent of nature which happens when you evolve more things are added. Similarly, your ethical standards will be different from that of, let's say, a pig, because you are uh, already have abilities that the pig doesn't, in the evolutionary tree of advancement. We are already making love and war and all of those things, and therefore this should simply be another next step. So this is also a product of evolution, that your ethical standards are evolving, and it is happening so much right now is because now we also are developing the means to make veganism universal, right? We are in petri dishes, we are creating meat, so the protein problem will not be a problem for very long. And we are talking about climate change, we're talking about global warming, we're talking about all of those things because we have evolved to the point that we're affecting our planet, and we need to take measures to safeguard our planet, simply because that's again is tied to our biological drive to live and to propagate. And as far as I understand the literature, I'm not very, again, very not very educated on this, is that veganism in the long term is going to safeguard the planet more so than if you keep industry farming animals. So that is the case, and the only downside was protein, and we're figuring that out as well. And now it will just be about distribution. So you can just say that you are hinging on the materialist framework of survival, and this is simply the next step.
Just to be clear, are you a materialist?
No, I'm not.
You're not. Okay. It's just because you're talking about materialism a lot, so I was just wondering if it's kind of something that like you would believe in as well.
I mean, I am I'm a follower. I'm a dharmic person, right? So I'm a follower of Sanatan Dharma. Uh, and if you've heard about Hinduism, just understand it as the non-corrupted form of Hinduism. So the reason I want always fall back into materialism is because I believe empiricism, science, and materialism is the best ground that most people can agree upon when they're talking about things, right? Like people might not agree about my God, but they can agree upon the fact that there is a bottle in my hand right now. So it is more universal in that sense in terms of communication. That is why I fall back into it when I am trying to explain things.
Yeah, I feel like maybe someone who kind of has an understanding of like universal claims and everything like that would be very good for you to speak to in that essence. Because for me, as soon as you say these things, I'm like, oh well, that could be applicable to sentience. Like you can empirically view sentience. I think people misconstrue like sentience with emotion and stuff like that and the feeling, but it's also the experience. And I know that's very qualitative. But it can be like observable. Like I can see someone and assume that they are experiencing, right? So yeah, well, in the interest of time, like I guess we could table this, and I could definitely, not off the top of my head, but I could recommend some people who are objectivists and could probably have that conversation from that essence. Like that you'd probably have some fun there. But do you mind if I just like pick your brain quickly and try and kind of circle back to the part that we were talking about? Is that cool? Okay. So
Yeah.
you know how I said there's no morally significant difference in my view that would justify exploiting and killing, say, a pig, a cow, a dog, but that would justify it in the human context, you know? I don't know if I said that correctly. Basically, there's no morally significant difference between them and us that would justify it in those contexts. Do you agree? Or is there something intrinsic to the pig, the dog, the giraffe, any animal who's not human that for you does justify putting them in the farms or taking their milk or something like that?
Okay, so you're asking my like personal ethical
Yeah.
standards in that, right? Yeah. Uh, I don't personally like eat meat at all, right?
Yes.
I have been raised vegetarian to the extent no eggs. I don't even eat onion and garlic ever since I was born,
Okay.
right? And yeah, so
No
like very
garlic?
dharmic person.
No
No
garlic.
garlic, no onion.
Oh my goodness.
And it's
Okay.
because of the like religious frame we're in,
Okay,
right?
yeah,
Because
okay.
those are different foods have different energies, and that is the reason you don't have
Oh,
certain foods
okay.
if you practice a certain sort of like sadhana is basically meditation, right?
Okay, okay.
So because I do practice it, I have to only eat foods that let my mind be clear. I cannot have a lot of anxiety ridden thoughts. I cannot have a lot of laziness ridden thoughts. If I have them, that will break my concentration or my state of mind.
So are you
So
saying
that is why
I lack concentration because I'm eating garlic bread? Is that is that what it's been this whole time?
in my culture, yes.
Okay. Damn it.
This is my touch.
Okay. All right. That might be the answer.
Right.
Maybe I need
But,
to. Okay. Yeah. No, I
yeah.
eat
So
a
that's
lot of
my
garlic.
standard, right?
Okay. Cool. Okay.
Uh,
Okay. So.
and whether or not the industry farming thing is correct or not, I believe I wouldn't do it. My culture would not promote it. And I don't know. I don't like making universal ethical claims as like unless and until I have like a complete system to determine it, which I'll have to like live think as I do on my channel.
Okay, but like just like it's not so much the case that like I'm asking for like a universe. I don't think I am anyway. But what I'm asking for, so say for example, I
Mhm.
have in my hands, imagine my hands big enough to do this, but I have a pig and I have a human, and I'm just saying like, okay, one you view as someone to exploit, maybe it is to use their skin, or maybe it is to
Mhm.
test on them in a laboratory like we do with pigs,
Mhm.
or put it with any animal, you would do that too. Um,
Mhm.
and then you have a human. You wouldn't do that to the human, but you would to the pig. So in my viewpoint, there has to be something intrinsic within the human that's
Mhm.
stopping me, but not for the
Mhm.
pig. Like, is there something for you that would stop you because they're a human?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, same species, and if you're going back onto my ethical framework, it's because I incur a larger karmic burden if I kill a human being. I incur a smaller karmic burden if I kill a pig.
Okay, what basis is the karmic burden like? Where's that coming
Uh,
from?
it's in our particular religious text,
Mm-hmm.
and it is simply uh, we do believe in ahimsa. Ahimsa is basically non-violence, right?
Yes.
And every time, even if you eat a potato, you incur some form of karmic burden that you later have to figure out how to get rid of.
Okay.
And there is a hierarchy, right? And in which like animals rank below human beings by significant margins. That if you kill an animal, you do incur a karmic burden, but less so than a human being. And if you have a plant, I mean, again, ultimately the system is again the same thing, uh, just in a different flavor, that human beings rank above animals because I believe most of these systems are somehow linked to survivability, and that is how this is
You're
they are coming up
sounding
with all
like a
of these things.
materialist.
I can believe a lot of things, and I
Yeah.
don't have to yeah,
Okay,
but
so
that is the point, right? I believe hierarchy always ends up being the case no matter who you are. It is just how strong are you about a certain boundary that you decide for yourself.
so yeah, I found out about ahimsa, and I don't know very much about it, but I found out about the existence of it through veganism. So just to be clear, is there more of a karmic burden when you kill a pig versus when you eat a potato?
Yes.
There is. Okay. So in your
Yeah.
framework, you could make the claim that you want to lower your karmic burden by so you avoid the exploitation and the killing of the pig, the cow, the chicken.
Yeah, if I can avoid it, right? So I'll avoid killing the pig and instead eat a fruit, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just like how it is. I mean, it does get nuanced, but the basic core tenet is that there is also the thing that you also incur a karmic burden if you do cause harm to yourself. If you because self is your body, and your body is a gift from the gods. And if let's say you make it so that you're protein deficient and you're causing active harm to your body, it is incurring karmic load like on your parents, it is incurring karmic load on your next lives.
Mm-hmm.
So do the ethical standard as long as you're not harming yourself is, I think, the main uh, point here.
Do you track your protein intake a day?
Yeah.
How many grams of protein would you get in your current calorie like maintenance?
Currently, I take anywhere between 120 to 140 grams of protein.
Okay. I when I'm tracking, I'm usually putting myself in a calorie deficit by like 500 calories. So I'm eating 1,500 to 1,600 calories a day, and in within that, as a plant-based diet, I'm consuming about 120 to 130 grams of protein. So if I was in the maintenance, then
Mhm.
I could probably do 160. So
Right.
as long as we both agree that like it's not something within veganism that you're going to be like protein deficient. Like you can very much
You
be,
can, but
yeah.
I believe it's like privileged to be able to do that. I mean, I live in India. I see that protein sources are few and far between, especially if you're a vegetarian.
Mm-hmm.
And then even the everything is very expensive. Specifically, if you're trying to have protein powder, the expenses keep on lining up, and it is not practical for, let's say, a laborer in my society who
Mm-hmm.
barely earns enough to eat something, to have to buy protein powder, to have to figure out ways. To them, it is much simpler to go to the market, get a bunch of eggs, eat them. That will satiate their needs.
Oh, I've never been to India. Like, I've never seen or had to buy anything from, like, within like a shop, a food shop there. But are you familiar with Shivam of Voice of Vegans?
I know.
Because I work with him, and he lives in India, um, and he says the opposite. He thinks it's privileged to like not be vegan, if I'm saying correctly.
It
Yeah.
depends entirely on the kind of protein intake that you're talking about. If you want to eat beef, it is extremely expensive,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even in India.
Yeah.
But if, let's say, you want to have a kilo of chicken, right, it's not as expensive. And if
Yeah.
you want to have eggs, eggs are dirt cheap.
Okay.
Anyone can have eggs, and they can satiate themselves also, no matter how what do you call it, no matter how poor you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why I believe uh, ethicals, I mean, there is the thing that I said once to a friend. I recall that it is that ethics, art, and morality are the privileges of the are privileges. They
Mm-hmm.
are not rights, or they are not rules, because if you're poor enough, you have to scrape by, right? Survival comes first.
Yeah, I just like, I believe his viewpoint as well, though. There is because he's a bodybuilder as well, so he has to get high protein. And yeah, but say it was, for example, like I'll talk to him after this, and I definitely check him out. He's a Voice of Vegans, um, and he what was I gonna say? Yeah, he's a bodybuilder, and he'd probably say like the opposite. But say if it were to be privileged, I think if you are in a place of privilege, it's my viewpoint that you have a duty to act better or in accordance with values that like actually align,
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
an inability to do so might be harder to do. So like for example the desert
Mhm.
island situation, that reaps you of all privilege, and suddenly you start acting a certain way, right? Like so for
Mhm.
example, like if some mother steals bread to feed her family, I'm going to judge her differently because she's not in a position of privilege versus like a white collar criminal, who's just
Right,
stealing.
definitely.
Yeah. um I'm gonna have to go. I am gonna have to go. Like it's nearly 2 hours, but this definitely has
Yeah,
been
this has
an
gone on for long enough.
yeah, it's an interesting conversation for sure, and I do appreciate the good faith, and I don't think I think it accidentally became more of a conversation about like meta ethics in some way and like objectivism versus subjectivism, which
Everything, everything. I once entered an anime subreddit, and
oh no.
the entire subreddit within 2 days became about ethics and philosophy. And then the moderator came and he's like, "What? Why are we not discussing the anime? What are we discussing?"
But yeah, no, I definitely think like there are people out there who are vegan, who are like objectivists, who could speak to you and come to you with a universal claim and get you instead of vegetarian to vegan. I could see you being a militant vegan and being a good arguer for the case, definitely, because I think we do need people who are subjectivists, and I do think we need people who are objectivists to appeal to what it is inside someone that drives them. Because ultimately, as much as I love logic, philosophy, and I love exploring them and I wish I understood them more, I think people are emotional creatures. They're driven by feel good things and agreeing with people and feeling validated and all those things. So, there are multiple avenues to kind of have these
I mean,
discussions, but I can see you're more.
personally, yeah, you can. That will be great. Actually, I just wanted to say one thing. I believe you should just have this argument in your back pocket. The evolution argument for veganism, that we are progressing as a species and therefore our ethical standards will shift, just like how our like love and war concept evolved. And ultimately veganism is better for our survival because it saves the planet, and we are in that position where no other life was so far, and it does ensure our biological need for survival. You can
Yeah,
make that
like
argument. I don't think there is any thing that they can say beyond this.
yeah, definitely. Because I know there's these arguments that like our infrastructure that we build now is arguably part of nature because we are part of nature evolving and making it. And
Yeah.
there's all these arguments. I just think my brain doesn't see it that it sees it kind of like separated in a way. So it feels kind of dishonest to go there in a way. But if I knew that that was
Mhm.
someone's value, and that's why I was asking you if you were a materialist and bootstrap like evolution, and it was because if you did go there, then I would kind of like entertain and try and go into your world in that way. But yeah, like
Honestly, I talk about evolution or these things is so that I can have a conversation. I could have just come into this conversation. I can be like, I believe in X faith. This is the pre-requirements in Y faith. That is the reason I am this.
mhm.
And you cannot have a argument then. You cannot have any sort of discussion then, right? Then it just becomes, oh, you're questioning my faith. And I find it very dishonest. And I believe that it leads to no progression. That is why I fall back into materialism. Because at least there is some argument to be made here, right? There is some discussion to be had.
Yeah, obviously I've gone down the route of like talking to people and having to have knowledge of their worldview, which obviously like I come across more like Christians or Muslims than I do of this faith. So if I don't have the knowledge of it, you're right in the sense that if I don't have the knowledge of it, I can't then do some sort of internal critique, which is often what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and appeal to the values that someone already has, because of I suppose how I'm kind of damned to my subjectivity, right? So that's where I go.
No, I mean, it would have been intellectually dishonest on my end to
Hmm.
bring in my faith and religion from the very beginning,
Yeah.
right? Because then I basically disarm you in the sense that there is no conversation. What was the point? The point of these discussions, debates, and anything is to further our understanding and reach some sort of truth, right? It shouldn't be about posturing yourself and stroking your own ego. That is the destruction of reality in my philosophical stance.
So just to be clear, like, do you think it would be dishonest, like, say for example, there's an atheist and then there's a Christian, and the Christian's like, well, I believe God's existence to be the case because it was revealed through divine revelation. Do you think they're being dishonest?
Uh, if hmm,
Because I don't think they
in a
are.
sense, yes. I mean,
Oh,
see, they are see, practically they're just saying their faith, right? It functionally speaking,
yeah.
I am just giving you my stance, right?
Hmm.
But oftentimes it's a way to shut down discussions, right? It is a rhetorical move of
Hmm.
sorts. I possess full capability of talking about ethics from a universal standpoint. So why should I fall back onto my subject or my personal universality or my personal subjective opinion, which is ultimately considered to be objective by me? Because then there is no discussion, right? I'm like, my book is right, your book is wrong.
Hmm.
End of story. What discussion is going on to be there? We have like we have to come to some middle ground, some way to discuss, some third party. That is the reason I believe when an atheist and a Christian argue, right? They shouldn't argue about, I mean, they always speak past each other.
Hmm.
Atheist is arguing about empiricism, objectivity, testability, but that is not of consideration to the guy who is talking about Christianity, right? I think the discussion or the debate should always be metaphysical. Okay, your God is ultimate truth. Let's discuss that.
Yeah, that's the
And
thing.
then
I
they should
watch a
discuss.
lot of like atheist versus presuppositionalist debates, and yeah, they go down that route of saying sometimes it's a clash, but sometimes it is like an internal critique of like showing that it is the case that they are presupposing just because a lot of these presups will say, well, you're presupposing the non-existence of God, and then people are like, yeah, but you're presupposing the existence of God because as soon as they say, oh, God is real because of divine revelation, which is in a sense circular, right?
I,
So,
yeah, I think actually I got more clearer like way to tell you what I believe. So the reason I said it is intellectually dishonest or disingenuous is because I have the ability to enter into a common ground with you, right?
Okay.
If there is my frame, there is your frame.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have the ability to come here and I don't, then if you don't come here, that is intellectually dishonest.
Mm-hmm.
If in this particular case, I had the ability to come into materialism that you can understand,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you did not have the ability to come within my frame, which was my religion.
Yeah.
So if I don't come to a common ground, then I'm being intellectually
You're
dishonest.
trying to shut it down. Yeah,
And
I understand that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
either one has to move or both have to move. But like there should be a movement when they're in the same frame. Only then there can be a discussion.
I get it. It's more of a tool of like, this discussion has ended now. This is why I believe it. Leave me alone. Like I do. I've seen that in real time quite a lot, definitely. Yeah, I'm just trying to think like there are probably a lot of people who are more well equipped to kind of go to the viewpoint that you are, because I think there is some middle ground to be had and more fruitful discussion to be had with them. But yeah,
I actually appreciated the discussion a lot, honestly.
yeah, no, I appreciate it a lot, and I would be happy to have further conversations with you. And um, I definitely, hope that you don't think it's like a sickening, because you said it's a sickening viewpoint to, not come from this place of equality in your viewpoint. And I feel like we didn't have time to properly hash that out, so maybe we could another time.
I think I just like that is a issue, right? I'm very declarative in my speech
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times, right? So my standards can be quite ruthless at times. I had a debate with someone,
Mm-hmm.
a person who was talking for logic and everything, and I noticed that he used AI to write his answers. And immediately in the discussion, I was like, that is anti-human.
Okay.
If if a bird is a bird because it flies, that is its innate property. If a dog is a dog because it barks, a human is a human because we have the ability to think. If you're outsourcing that ability to something else, then that is more human than you are. You're outsourcing your humanity, and
Mm-hmm.
hence this does not qualify under humanity. You're not a human. I said that. So I end up saying things because I don't know. I think I see the logic clearly, and then I get emotionally attached to the logic that I see,
Yeah.
and that is why I'm very declarative in as such. But don't take it like in that sense. I'm always open to change my life. I can say that this is a purple bottle. What are you talking about? And then you can prove that it is an orange bottle. I'll be like, oh yeah, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah. No, I get that for sure, and yeah, I think we could hash out some more discussions, but I do think it's just one of those cases where talking to someone else, because obviously I want to see a vegan world. That is my preference. Maybe there is some hidden universality that I haven't like come to understand through not being a philosopher or anything. Um,
Maybe we can do something like when you do come across a good argument and a good anti-vegan argument that someone says, then we can discuss that and see if it actually holds universally, or if there is a vegan argument to be made which is greater than that. Although I'm not sure how like good arguments you'll get. I saw a video, like guy was a carnivore and he was arguing nonsense.
Well, that's the thing. Like for me, when you say "oh, good argument," it's just like because they don't accord with my preferences. Because say it's a sound argument, say it's a consistent argument, it would be good in those senses. But like they
Yeah,
would lead to such
it
absurd
just
places for me, or such like horrific places to me, that it's then not a good argument in my view. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, I just like view good arguments in this. You can tell me that I am not a human being, right? You can prove to me logically that I am not a human being, and if it is a like sound argument, I'm like, oh, good argument.
Hmm.
I'll give you that.
Yeah, like sound in that
So
sense.
it's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I like that. But from what I understand, like again, just I have just seen a clip of a singular video of yours.
Hmm.
I'm going to assume that most of your guests are going to be people who have emotional attachments to whatever position that they're in, and then they're retroactively trying to put some weird form of logic which fails within itself also, consistently speaking.
Um, I'd say maybe, if I had to put a number to it, maybe like 10% are actually having a consistent position. It's just leading to something like a perpetual holocaust of humans, or a perpetual holocaust of aliens, or it's leading to infinite assault, or something of that, or the destruction and killing of people with an IQ lower than 80, you know, it's something like that. So it could be consistent,
Right.
but it's,
Arguments, chat GPT type arguments. Like you can tell these arguments are so classical. I've like heard them so many times.
yeah, I've
One
heard,
should look at them before saying it and be like, huh, this has been discussed 80 times. Let's like try something
yeah.
better.
Yeah, 100%. But I'm gonna have to leave it here because I feel like we could talk for ages.
Yeah, this was
But
really fun.
yeah, no, I'm glad you're vegetarian, but obviously my preference would be veganism. So I'm not fully glad because obviously, like, what animal products do you consume? And
Milk. Milk
or
and milk products.
okay, milk.
No
So
eggs, nothing else.
if I could have if I could find someone to have a conversation with you about like consuming
The dairy
dairy.
industry and how they like produce milk and like the insemination thing and like the how
And
it reacts to the
specific to India as well. Like I could maybe, would you be down for that conversation?
yeah, sure, definitely.
Okay.
Although yeah, for that in specific okay, I'm not going to predict. I know that it is going to go one of two ways, so there's that.
Yeah, I just know a guy and I work with him. He's very like philosophically minded, and he'll have more contextual. Like, I don't want to like
For sure.
pretend to know things about other places. So, yeah, definitely. Okay, well, thank you so much for the conversation, and I'll hook you up with other people, and we'll see
Sure.
how this kind of progresses.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you also. I think your name is pronounced Ellie, or like
I
am I
prefer
pronouncing it wrong?
L, but yeah, it does
L.
say Ellie,
Okay.
but
Oh, so
yeah,
like L from Death Note.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Go vegan
okay,
or
really
you'll
nice
be in
call.
my book.
I actually saw your profile and I was like, saw your pronouns. I'm like, okay, so her pronouns are she and her.
Mhm.
And then I was like, uh, but we are having a second person I'm going to talk in second person. It's not like the pronouns are going to come up anyway.
Yeah, and what's your name? Sorry.
My actual name is Priyansh, but again, I like to go with the handle, which is the Apex Mind. So
Apex
people just
Mind.
like shorthand it and just call it Apex or maybe Apex
Apex.
Mind,
Yeah.
whatever works. Yeah.
Reference me how I deserve Apex.
See again. Okay, I want to tell this because so many people assume that this comes out of some form of arrogance, right? It
Mhm.
doesn't.
No.
The point is, it's like you know how Nisha had the concept of the Uberschman, the basically the Superman.
Oh yeah.
So the apex point is like a goal for me, right? I want
Okay.
to live up to this name. I want to eventually become this, and that is the reason it is the name of the channel,
Hmm.
because it's like this is where I show you the transformation journey of how I think like an apex mind and how I become apex mind over the course of my journey.
Hmm. Well, hopefully I can be part of
That's
that. We can go have incremental
definitely.
discussions. And when you say Apex, I just think of the game. So.
Yeah,
All right, I'll have to leave it there. I need dinner.
sure.
But yeah,
That was really
thank you so
great.
much for the conversation. I really appreciate it. It's nice to have someone who's actually intellectually honest rather than just kind of like trying to defend the view and double down just for the sake of just being a pain in the bum. So
Because this is a real debate. Those are not real debates. Those are just
no,
like ego posturing. I hate it.
yeah, I had a debate
This
with
is how
someone
debate should
earlier,
be.
and
Ancient Greece taught us how should debate should
yeah,
be. It is supposed to be honest.
yeah, you want to kind of share your worldviews and hash it out and the best arguments. Like
Yeah,
yeah,
like I'm going to come up with. I'm not even going to say this is my world. I'm like I believe in this to be true.
hmm,
Prove me wrong.
yeah, and
This is truth. Now prove it wrong.
yeah, and I genuinely I just believe it to be true that we should value sentient beings. So like
Yeah.
I just share that with the world and hope that my argument is going to be strong. And of course, it's got to be strong against a variation of viewpoints. So yeah, I will try and improve
Definitely.
it.